Hello and welcome to The Comic Cave. I'm Ramsey, aka Captain Away, and today I'm looking at the 1994 series, Cosmic Powers. Cosmic Powers is not a part of the Infinity series itself, primarily due to the fact that it's not written by Jim Starlin, but instead his fellow Thor Blood and Thunder author, Ron Marz. Despite that, it is clearly an attempt on Marvel's part to recapture the success Thanos brought them with the Jim Starlin stories, particularly the Infinity Gauntlet. So there are a lot of superficial similarities to the Infinity Trilogy. The plot, once again, actually begins in the pages of Silver Surfer, this time with the appearance of a new villain Tyrant. The story is told in 6 double-sized issues, and we see the return of Ron Lim as artist. Ron Marz even, somewhat annoyingly, steals Starlin's habit of starting each issue with a quote. But that's about where the similarities end. While the Infinity stories were primarily focused on Earth and its heroes reacting to the machinations of extremely powerful enemies, this story is more of a space opera that spends no time on Earth, and each issue focuses on a different character, or pair of characters in one case, as one by one they get pulled into the larger story. Also, while Thanos is, again, the primary focus of the story, it seems Marvel felt that the declining popularity of Starlin's Thanos stories was due to Thanos becoming too complicated and interesting of a character. So they begin this one by tossing out all that character growth he'd had in the past few years, setting him back to how he was acting before Infinity Gauntlet, and returning him to a more villainous type. I doubt Starlin was particularly happy with this change, and it's pretty interesting to note that the final issue of this story came out the same month as the final issue of a comic Starlin would write for Marvel for nearly 10 years. I can't help but feel that this series might have had something to do with that. But I'll let you be the judge of how pissed off Starlin should be as we take this away. The story for this comic actually has its origins in 3 issues of The Secret Defenders. That story, despite its last 2 issues running at the same time as this series' first 2 issues, is a direct prequel to this series, and thankfully included in the collected edition. The Secret Defenders is a team normally created by Doctor Strange, consisting of rotating groups of established heroes in the Marvel Universe. For these 3 issues though, the focus suddenly shifts to Thanos, putting together his own team of champions for undoubtedly less altruistic reasons. This team starts with Gaetar, or Guitar, or however you want to say that, who is actually saved from certain death by the Mad Titan himself. This is ironic because the last time these 2 chaps met, Thanos had physically altered Gaetar to look just like him, in the hopes that Silver Surfer might, accidentally, kill him. Which means, yeah, he's the crying Thanos from the image I used for my Silver Surfer Rebirth of Thanos breakdown. Fun stuff. I can't think of a better way to start this comic than having Thanos do the reverse of a thing he did in a Jim Starlin comic. There he killed Gaetar, here he saves him. It's like they're opening with the statement, let's undo everything Starlin has done for the character. If you're wondering how it is Gaetar is alive in the first place to be in danger of dying again, well, it turns out when Minter learned of Thanos' little trick, he used some BS Titan-ian science to revive Gaetar. Gaetar then rescued Nebula from Titan Prison, where she was mostly catatonic as we saw in the Infinity Gauntlet Aftermath collection, and took her to some place where they turned her into a cyborg person in order to help her return to her old self. Because Gaetar is kind of a sweet guy really, despite all his attempts to act tough, he's maybe a bit tsundere. Thanos introduces G to his collection of action figures. Oh, I mean, supervillains. He also nicely explains who those characters are for anyone who doesn't know. There's Super Skrull, the old Fantastic Four villain who has all of their powers at once, Nitro with the power of spontaneous combustion, Titanium Man is sort of Russian Iron Man, and Rhino, who's basically the Juggernaut but more stupid. He sends this little group out to get a robot. The robot was built by an ancient civilization with the primary purpose of recording knowledge, but now is living on some planet where they worship him as a god. That worship has gone to his head, and he's gained some megalomaniacal tendencies. This means the robot wants to start a war with a nearby planet, and since kidnapping the robot would mean preventing the war, Thanos doesn't want to do it himself because he's tired of being seen as anything but a supervillain. Because all villains think of themselves as villains, obviously. So instead, the group goes down to nab the bot, but before they can get away, they are outnumbered and outflanked by the planet's zealots. Thanos shows up, but not to help them. In fact, he even claims to have destroyed their ship, stranding them on the planet. He then takes the robot and teleports away, leaving the group to face their certain death. Instead, they manage to get in one of the destroyed ship's escape pods and get out to space. They still almost die, but are saved by Silver Surfer, and, this guy. What was your name again? Oh right, Legacy. Guess I didn't take his advice. If Legacy's little star symbol looks familiar, it's because he's the son of Mar-Vell, the original Captain Marvel, and before long would go on to be one of the 20-something other Captain Marvels in the Marvel Universe. Nitro takes some fiendish delight in being weirdly friendly with Legacy because he was an enemy of his father, and while he didn't actually kill Mar-Vell, he was largely responsible for his death. While defusing a bomb planted by Nitro, Captain Marvel would be exposed to a gas that would later give him the cancer that would take his life. Yeah, Mar-Vell was killed by cancer. That's actually really depressing. After Surfer heals everyone, Super Skrull flies off back to his home planet. Nitro takes the refueled escape pod, Surfer takes Rhino and Titanium Man home to Earth, and Legacy takes Gaiatar to jail on Titan so he can be with his favorite gal, Nebula. God, he's just so sweet. So finally we move on to the main story, which opens with, holy crap, that's a super messed up but awesome opening double-page spread. And that tiny little figure in the distance? Yeah, that's Thanos. He killed all these people, the entire Oven mercenary armies, down to literally the last man, apparently because he was bored. In case you didn't believe me that they were serious about making Thanos a villain again. The last man attacks Thanos, but he dispatches him with ease, ending with getting him down on his knees, taking his knife, and slicing his throat. That last bit is illustrated as just a straight line and a blood spatter, which is so stylish and so awesome. Man, it's good to have Ron Lim back. Unfortunately, his talents are mostly wasted as a lot of the rest of the issue is pretty much Thanos just reading the Wikipedia page on this stupid looking character Tyrant, a villain that has been appearing for a little while now in the pages of Silver Surfer. Though at least Thanos did have to basically play some weird video game in order to get that information. Information he received from the robot that his group of defenders nabbed for him. Even though when this issue came out, they actually hadn't done that yet. Comic books. The second issue takes us to a story about the character Terrax, and we see that both the penciler and inker have changed. This is something Marvel decided to do for this series. As a little article in the back of the collection informs us, they felt that over 200 pages in 6 months was too much for any one artist, so they intentionally changed up the teams with 5 different artists and 4 different inkers working on this book. But you may notice that while all those teams changed, the colorist remains the same across all 6 books. So I'm sure this too much work in 6 months was a sentiment much appreciated by the undoubtedly overworked and underpaid Tom Vincent. He is the same colorist responsible for making Thanos Quest look so amazing, and he does an amazing job here too, providing a nice consistent look for the series despite working for such a wide range of different artists. I think this is most noticeable with Tom Grindberg, who drew the Secret Defenders issues at the beginning, which I think look about as bad as most Tom Grindberg comics I've ever read. But his issue of Cosmic Powers I actually don't hate. In fact, I even think it looks really good at times. I mean, look at this art. It actually looks pretty awesome. Man, those colors. The only reason I can think of for liking him here and hating his art in other comics coming out at the same time as this one is the coloring. I guess most of the other colorists he's been working with, while they don't seem bad, just weren't doing the art any favors. So the colorist can really make or break an artist. Never underestimate the value of a good colorist. Anyway, Terrax is busy on a planet ruled by a leader obsessed with his giant gladiatorial arena, which really, there must be millions of those planets in Marvel and DC Comics. Terrax destroys his competition in the arena, but when the king only gives him as reward a sexy lady, he kills the king. He takes the lady anyway, who is begging for him to return her home, and as he's not really a villain, he agrees to do so, across a very Star Wars landscape of seedy space bars and barren deserts. But it turns out it was all a lie, just a trick to get him alone so her brothers could attack him and steal his power axe. But Terrax isn't really a hero either, and he had already warned the woman not to give him reason to show his dark side, so he makes short work of her and her brothers. As luck would have it, this is right when Thanos shows up to offer him an alliance. A chance at an empire of his own if he agrees to join his fight against Tyrant. So they set off to find a character named Ganymede, because she should know a lot about Tyrant, even though Thanos only went to Terrax because he was supposed to have information about Tyrant, information that he apparently doesn't have. Ganymede, being a woman, can't have a comic of her own, so instead is paired with this character called Jack of Hearts. Jack has been around for a long time, and only recently before this became one of Marvel's space-traveling characters. His powers are unstable, requiring him to wear a containment suit that makes him look like the Jack of Hearts playing card. Kind of. Ganymede is the last of an all-female warrior race known as the Spinsterhood, because males were writing these comics, though I guess you could say they're taking it back. The Spinsterhood existed entirely to defeat Tyrant, which is why they think she will have information on him. If she does, though, she never gives it to anyone in this comic. Her point of being here instead seems to primarily be eye candy, as she wears an outfit that makes Wonder Woman's look modest. It cannot be comfortable to not be wearing a bra with a shirt like that. Youch. Their issue even opens with Jack telling her he loves her, which is apparently enough to make her immediately drop trow for him. Yeah, this is really how their issue begins. This is revealed to be just a dream though, letting us know that this is just where Jack's mind is. And it really is where his mind is. He really never stops thinking with his penis the whole issue. He keeps trying to protect her by insisting he goes first on their exploration of a planet once belonging to her sisterhood. The planet is one that kept others of her kind cryonically frozen in cells, and Ganymede is trying to discern if she is really the last of her kind. They reach a point where they find the cells and discover that all the occupants really are dead. Ganymede is devastated, and Jack is caring and understanding and just stands there being supportive. Nah, I'm just kidding. He uses this opportunity to tell her he loves her. Seriously, fuck off, Jack. I feel like Ganymede is way too understanding of his shit, even though she does give him a lot of annoyed looks. After one time when she refuses his offer to go first, he responds, "But I'm worried about you," to which she replies, "That's kind." No, that's benevolent sexism. Jack is the worst. Their story also ends with the sudden appearance of Thanos, who smacks Jack aside like the useless side character that he is and kidnaps Ganymede. We then cut to a story about Legacy, who has finally realized who Nitro is, and sets out on a journey of revenge to bring the man to justice for his role in killing Mar-Vell. He tracks him down to his hideout, which turns out to be the ruins of the Kree homeworld, the alien race Mar-Vell was from. That's pretty messed up, dude. Legacy beats Nitro until he's almost dead, but is stopped by a conveniently placed monument to his dead dad, with an ironically appropriate quote. So instead, he brings Nitro back to Titan to put him in their intergalactic jail, and there he runs into Jack of Hearts, who has come to Titan in search of help in stopping Thanos. They go together and find Ganymede, who stops them from quote-unquote saving her because she never needed saving in the first place. She's now working with Thanos and Terrax, since they also want to stop Tyrant. The three had, in fact, already infiltrated Tyrant's base, where they were busy facing off against Morg, the focus of issue 5. Morg was, as of this story, the current herald of Galactus, as Silver Surfer and Terrax had once been, though Tyrant had been holding him prisoner for some time. Tyrant slapped some techno-nonsense on Morg's head, turning him into some kind of hypnotized slave, and sent him to attack Thanos and the crew. Terrax breaks Morg's mind control helmet, and Morg uses the appearance of Jack and Legacy to run off back to his real master. Jack is horrified that Ganymede would willingly agree to work with Thanos, to the point that he asks her, "What kind of woman are you?" Well, Jack, not that's any of your business, Jack, but she's the kind of woman who isn't only thinking with her penis, Jack. Oh, yeah, or like Thanos says. Man, I'm growing disturbed how often it's a villainous character that's making the reasonable argument toward the supposed hero in a comic book. With Morg gone, Tyrant shows up to face the group, only to find Thanos has run off somewhere. Where he ran off to was to collect this weird ball thing. Maybe he's about to give Luke some lightsaber training? Thanos returns when only Ganymede is left standing and drops a hard truth nugget on her. That when Tyrant retreated from battle with her kind a millennia ago, it didn't have anything to do with the Spinsterhood. It was because Galactus made him. And Galactus can do this not only because he's incredibly powerful, but because he actually created Tyrant. Apparently, Galactus grew tired of the lonely life of being a world devourer and decided to make himself a companion. And he made another dude? Tyrant was never content just hanging out with Galactus, instead wanting to use their great powers to rule the universe. Galactus disagreed, bringing the two into eternal conflict. Now Tyrant is trying to build up power by absorbing energy into this little ball that Thanos is stealing, especially the energy from Galactus' heralds, so he can finally be strong enough to defeat Galactus. But now Thanos is trying to steal that power, and so the two fight it out. Their battle is so intense, it completely destroys Tyrant's base around them. While they fight, the others escape aboard Thanos' own ship. When the fight has destroyed pretty much all of Tyrant's base, Thanos declares himself the winner of the fight for no reason at all and simply teleports away. Back at his home, he congratulates himself on a job well done, even though what did he really do beyond steal an orb and run away like a chicken? Also, we turn the page and see that Tyrant has an Indiana Jones style warehouse filled with millions more of those tiny little training remotes or whatever they are. But what we won't see in this comic is what either man actually plans to do with these power cells, as this is where it ends, so let's get to the breakdown. There isn't a lot I actually like about this series. Tom Vincent's colors are pretty great, as per usual, and I actually found myself liking Ganymede. Her straightforward, pragmatic attitude toward her goal and her barely tolerating of Jack, even though she is way too forgiving toward him, made her probably the most interesting character in the bunch. If she only weren't inexplicably tied to Jack, I would have loved a solo series from her. The others failed to spark any interest from me. Even Thanos was significantly less interesting as Mars struggled to push his villainy while not completely doing away with his personality. And perhaps the biggest sin is how this comic fails to deliver on its very premise. We're introduced to the idea that Thanos wanted to fight Tyrant to relieve his boredom, going into the battle with the knowledge of how to defeat Tyrant and saving the universe, all while being an utter bastard to his teammates, would actually have been a pretty Thanos thing to do. Instead, we get a cop-out ending of him suddenly saying he's interested in this, and then blinking away before the fight is even finished. It's pretty disappointing. Despite all that, though, I can't say I hated this comic. Even though a lot of it is kind of boring side story, the overall story is interesting and entertaining enough that it kept me reading all on its own power. So that's why I'm giving this series a recommendation level of medium. This comic has a lot of problems, but somehow those problems don't manage to ruin the story. Thank you everybody for watching. As I record this, Endgame has just recently topped the highest grossing movies list of all time, which is pretty exciting. A nice way for me to cap off this series of reviews related to Thanos and the Infinity Gems. I hope you're not sick of me talking about Marvel, but just in case you are, I think I'll cover some indie comics for a bit. Hope to see you then, right here in the Comic Cave.